북한 주민의 인권에 대한 국제사회의 관심은 여전히 뜨겁습니다. 작년 10월에 취임한 줄리 터너 북한인권대사를 만나 현안에 대한 자세한 이야기 들어보겠습니다. Welcome, Ambassador Turner.
Thank you.
What brings to you Chicago?
I'm here in Chicago to speak at the University of Chicago this afternoon to talk to students about North Korean human rights issues. But I'm also here to meet with members of the divided families community, and these are families that were separated during the Korean War who hope to be reunited with their loved ones.
What did you want to communicate the most with U of C students and Chicago community?
So I really hope to communicate to University of Chicago students and the greater Chicago community of the importance of addressing the egregious human rights situation in North Korea, and that everybody can play a role, right? Students, Korean Americans, but also just Chicagoans have a role to play here. There are North Korean refugees living in the Chicago area who may need support learning English, right? Or there are advocacy efforts that members of the community can engage in. I think really in targeting University of Chicago students, I'm hoping to inject some energy into young activists who are going to be future leaders in advancing and advocating for the North Korean people.
Last October, you were sworn in as a U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean human rights issues. Explain to us your role in the U.S. government.
So it's my responsibility to coordinate and promote efforts to advance North Korean human rights. And so in doing that, I am working within the government to help integrate our North Korean human rights policy into our broader North Korea policy. With other governments, I'm helping to build partnerships with like-minded partners and allies. And also working through multilateral organizations like the UN to help raise international awareness, to help press for concrete change in North Korea, and also calling on the North Korean government to be responsive to the needs of their own people.
What is the current state of human rights in the DPRK?
Unfortunately, it's been getting worse. You know, COVID was really difficult and terrible for everyone around the globe, but it was extremely bad for the North Korean people, partially because it gave the government the opportunity to tighten already strict repression within the country. As over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government passed 3 laws that some have taken to calling the 3 evil laws. One was on youth education, the other was the Pyongyang dialect law, and the third one was the anti-reactionary thought law. But all 3 of these laws were framed to increase punishments for consuming foreign information. And so using a word, a South Korean slang word like oppa, is now illegal in North Korea, and you can be sentenced to prison for using it. Earlier this year, a handful of North Korean students were sentenced to 12 years of hard labor for watching a South Korean drama. And so the punishments are absolutely incommensurate with the crimes. And these things, I mean, watching a K-drama shouldn't be a crime to begin with. And so it is getting worse there. And that should be an even greater call to the international community to take action now.
So how does the U.S. improve human rights in the DPRK?
So we're working across a number of lines of effort. The first one is working with our partners and allies, and that can be in the multilateral space at the UN. In the last month, the UN Human Rights Council passed by consensus an annual resolution on North Korea's human rights record, and called upon the North Korean government to undertake actions that are recommended in the resolution. In addition to that, we're working with like-minded partners and allies to also increase the free flow of independent information into North Korea, because an informed citizenry will produce a more stable and peaceful and secure environment, but also helps to call for a more responsive government, one that meets the needs of the people. In addition to the work with partners and allies that we're doing, we are also pressing for accountability for those most responsible for North Korea's human rights abuses. We are also calling on the North Korean government for concrete change, and in doing so, we have made it very clear, and I have made it very clear, that we are open to a conversation with the North Korean government about human rights. This applies across the board with our North Korea policy, that we are open to dialogue without preconditions, and hope that we can have a real conversation about how to bring about positive improvements for the North Korean people. The last two areas are providing greater protections for North Korean refugees, and this includes calling upon China and Russia to abide by the principle of non-refoulement, to not forcibly return North Koreans back to North Korea. And then also to focus on the issue of divided families. It's a newer piece of my mandate, but it's an important piece, and one that is extremely time sensitive because of the age of many of the affected population. Time is running out for them. Many of these individuals have been separated from their brothers or sisters or loved ones for more than 70 years. And so we need to act now to allow them to be reconnected. Nobody should have to go that long without seeing their loved one. And that requires that the North Korean government change its repressive policies and allow these families to be reunited.
What is the current international climate regarding DPRK's repression of fundamental freedom? And what can the international community do about these matters?
So I think there's a lot of energy right now around North Korean human rights, especially in the international space. There was the recent Human Rights Council resolution that passed. I am in my position, and the South Korean government also has an ambassador for international cooperation on North Korean human rights, Lee Shin-hwa, and a relatively newly appointed special rapporteur on North Korean human rights issues, Elizabeth Salmon, has also been appointed. And so there are a lot of key positions that are now filled, and we have been working together to amplify the voices of the North Korean refugee community to help raise international awareness. I think we all want the North Korean government to come to the table and to engage with us. Unfortunately, they have been focused inwardly on increasing repression through many of the laws that I mentioned, and other actions. But we plan to continue to raise awareness. And I think that the international community as a whole can help by one, not losing faith and continuing to be persistent, that if we work together, if we continue to press for change, that it is possible to see improvements that lead to a better life for the North Korean people, that improve the welfare of North Koreans. And also that it requires that we continue to speak out clearly and boldly on these atrocities.
Can sanctions be an effective way to advance accountability?
I think sanctions are an important tool to advance accountability, and the U.S. government has taken a number of steps to sanction individuals involved in serious human rights abuses or censorship in North Korea. This is a tool that was made available under the North Korea Sanctions Policy Enhancement Act, and we have sanctioned more than 25 people under that authority. And I think the real value there is demonstrating by naming and shaming essentially the perpetrators of these human rights abuses, that we can see what they're doing, that they can't hide, that the veil has been lifted in many ways through the testimony of North Korean refugees, through the UN Commission of Inquiry report. But sanctions are not the end of the accountability effort. We still have a lot of work to do. But that process as a whole should be survivor-led, and that's where including and incorporating North Korean refugees in that process is really important. And it should include a full range of tools ranging from criminal accountability through a criminal process to truth-telling and memorialization, so that we and future generations can remember the types of things that have occurred in North Korea.
You've met many North Korean refugees in the US and in South Korea. What are the important issues that grabbed your attention?
That's a tough question, so it's a good one. I'll try and keep my answer concise. One of the things that I have found, and particularly with recent refugees, is so many of them leave North Korea seeking opportunity. They know they can't have it in North Korea. They know that they're being surveilled, they know that the repression exists, and they know that they're being fed lies or propaganda. And seeing those North Koreans get to either South Korea or the United States, seeing them succeed, seeing them start small businesses, seeing them become politicians, seeing them become government officials, or teachers, or whatever they choose to be, is amazing, and a true testament to what is possible for the entirety of the North Korean population if they were given the same freedoms that you and I have, that the South Korean people have. North Koreans could achieve that same economic prosperity and have those same opportunities in an environment where their government respects rights.
Then how many North Korean refugees in the US?
So the United States has brought in just under 250 North Korean refugees through the US Refugee Admissions Program.
Then how about in Chicago?
So my understanding is, and we don't necessarily track refugees after they arrive in the United States, but my understanding is that there are between 60 and 70 who some of them may have been resettled in South Korea before they came to the United States, but 60 to 70 North Korean refugees living in the Chicago area.
Not a small amount.
Yeah.
So is it okay for them the people know that they are North Korean refugees? Is it safe?
So one of the things that is great about the United States is that we have such a diverse country, right? And so North Korean refugees can decide. They can be Korean American here, they can be North Korean, they can be South Korean if they want to be, or they can just be American. And I think that's one of the reasons that many of them choose to come here, is that it is a little bit easier to blend in. But some of them want to speak out about their experiences. They want to continue to be a voice for the voiceless, to advocate on behalf of the North Koreans that don't have the opportunity to advocate for themselves. And so it's wonderful that those individuals are courageous and do take the risks to speak out and to be public about their heritage.
What messages do you have for Chicago Korean American community?
Yes, that's another good question. First, I'll start by tackling the divided family side of my trip to Chicago. There is a huge Korean American population here in Chicago, and one of the things that we're realizing as we're looking more into how to address separated families, how the U.S. government can be more supportive of this community, is getting a better understanding of who that community is, how they identify, what they look like in terms of age and size. We don't really have a good number or an assessment of a number of how many Korean Americans consider themselves divided family members. We need to hear more from the community of what they want through a family reunification process. And so I am hopeful that the Korean American community will engage on that topic. And I'm always open to having conversations with the community to talk more about what the U.S. government hopes to do in this space. But given the sense of urgency, given the aging population, this is a top priority for us. It's also something, though, that I know second and third generation Korean Americans want to carry forward. And so also talking to younger generations of Korean Americans about it is important. On North Korean human rights more broadly, I just want to double down on my earlier statement that everybody has a role to play here. Everybody can participate and do something that helps North Koreans, whether it be advocacy on behalf of North Korean human rights, on behalf of North Koreans, or tutoring a North Korean refugee student. Many of them arrive here not speaking English, not having a high school diploma that they can walk into a college with and say, please give me admission to your great institution, not having their medical license to practice medicine as they had been for years in North Korea or elsewhere. And so thinking about what skills you have that you can pass on to someone who is trying to start life from scratch here. I have greeted a number of North Korean refugees at the airport when they've arrived in the United States, and the first thing I often do is take them to Target because they're coming with a backpack and you need basic necessities when you arrive, and so we go to Target. But one of the moments that sticks out in my mind is when I take people into the toothbrush aisle at Target and you're faced with choice, right? I'm overwhelmed when I look at the number of toothbrushes in the toothbrush aisle. But you know, the first time when you ask somebody, pick a toothbrush, and they see the wall of toothbrushes, it's a lot to take in. And so thinking about what the community, especially Korean Americans, because there are cultural and language similarities rooted in the Korean heritage that Korean Americans share with North Koreans, can play an important role in making that transition so much easier for someone who arrives.
Last but not least, what does human rights mean to you?
That's also a good question. You know, that it's so hard because as Americans, I think we tend to take so much of that for granted. But I think that those things are about having opportunity and choice and being able to live life in the way that I want to live life. I am very lucky as a Korean American adoptee to have been given an opportunity to experience all of these things in America from a very young age, and I will forever be thankful to the United States for giving me all of the opportunity that I've had. But I think that at its very core, that opportunity is human rights.
Ambassador Turner, thank you for your time with News Magazine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.